Hey, welcome to 49cc Scoot. My name's Brent. I was browsing Marketplace for scooters one night, not really looking for anything, and I found a Kymco Super 850 two-stroke in decent shape for $300 with a title. It had Kymco's take on the Honda AF16 or AF18 style engine, so I thought it could be an interesting project to work on, but I was going back and forth about picking it up because I didn't really have cash to spare. I got back on Marketplace later, telling myself I was going to make a final decision, and a 1998 Yamaha Jog was listed 4 minutes earlier for free. It looked pretty clean, and it actually had a key and title, so I didn't hesitate to ask if I could pick it up and make arrangements to meet the next day. The trip was roughly 2.5 hours each way, so I hoped this wouldn't be like the other time I tried to get a free scooter on Marketplace and drove to the person's house only to find a pile of packages on the doorstep like they were gone for a long time and no one answering my messages. Thankfully, the guy was on time, very nice, and everything went smoothly. It's got plenty of blemishes, showing signs of being dropped with scuffs, and the front turn signal's taped in. Part of the handlebar cover is broken off, and the seat is ripped. The front turn signals wouldn't flash, and the rear signals didn't come on at all. The engine wouldn't start either, and the owner said it needed a carburetor, but honestly, doesn't pretty much every non-running scooter in classified say it needs either a carburetor, battery, or both? I don't know Pennsylvania title laws, but the owner wanted the title signed over at a notary public, so that was $15, including having a bill of sale notarized, and I gave him $100 for the free scooter because I appreciated it and wanted both of us to walk away happy. The smart play here would probably be to get it running and then flip it for profit. But I'm scooter obsessed, and after 20 years I finally have my first non-Chinese two-stroke that just happens to be a classic Jog, which has been a big part of the scooter tuning scene for ages, so I had to at least ride it. It's a tiny scooter, and I'm a big guy, so I figured there was a good chance that I wouldn't even be comfortable riding it. But there was really only one way to find out for sure. Before it even went on the workbench, the first step was weighing it, because one of the major attractions to the Jog for me is that they are supposed to be very light. I put a bathroom scale under one tire, and a shipping scale under the other, and just held it enough to keep it upright. This way you can not only get a total, but also see the difference in front and rear weight. I did this twice for accuracy, and it came out to 144.7 and 144.6 pounds total, with just over 97 pounds on the rear tire and roughly 47.5 pounds on the front tire. For comparison, both of my Vento Tritons weighed between 197 and 199 pounds, and a Buddy 50 that I worked on and thought it was pretty light weighed 170 pounds. Basically, the lighter the better if you're into drag racing especially. But having hardly any front weight means it's probably tough to keep the front on the ground with much power and can also be bad for handling and braking. I was looking at how small the 80-90-10 tires were, and then wondered how old they were because there's a bit of cracking on the sidewalls. Manufacturers put date codes on every tire, and generally they're 4 digits, with the first pair telling the week that they were made and the second telling the year. So if you had a tire with a code of, say, 0320, it was made in the 3rd week of the year in 2020. I couldn't find a 4-digit code on either of the Jog's tires, but I found a 3-digit code, so I did a little research to see if that could be it. It turns out that before the year 2000, date codes were usually just 3 digits because tire manufacturers thought no one should be using tires more than 10 years old, so there was no need for what would be the 3rd digit in newer codes, and the decade could simply be assumed. That means that these tires were made on the 35th week, so late August or the beginning of September, in a year ending in 5. Chengshins are supposed to be the original tires, But I found it hard to believe that these tires would sit around for 2 or 3 years before being put on a new scooter, and if they were made in 2000 or later, they should have the 4-digit code. Then I noticed a sticker saying the bike was made in 1995. Wait, they made a 98 Jog in 95? That made no sense. So I checked the title, and this is actually a 1996 Jog with 30-year-old tires. Recommendations vary, but generally 5 years to maybe 10 years absolute max should be the limit for tire life. I don't think any responsible mechanic would ever tell you it's safe to ride on a 30-year-old tire. That said, tires cost money, and I just wanted a test ride to see if I even liked the scoot. So I rolled the dice and decided to replace them later if I kept the bike. But again, I absolutely don't recommend that anyone uses tires this old. Moving on, I started taking off body panels so I could begin working on getting the engine to run. Most of the scooters that I work on allow for the seat bucket to come out with 4 bolts, and then it's a pretty clear shot to the carb. But this one requires multiple panels to be removed for the seat bucket to come out. I'm not a fan of having things attached to the seat bucket either, like building the battery box into it, so the battery needs to come out for the seat to come out, and the fuel pump is bolted to the other side as well. I guess when you've got a bike this small, you need to get a little bit creative with placements, and it does allow you to get to the battery with just removing one of the smaller side panels. I later learned to leave the seat on and just keep the rear plastics off when you want to get to the carb, and 4 bolts will remove the floorboard at that point if you want even easier access to the spark plug or engine. The oil reservoir takes up a lot of room and makes it a little more difficult to get to the carburetor, so I removed it. I don't like injection anyway and prefer to pre-mix, so that way I'm in control of the mix ratio and know exactly what's in there. The previous owner told me that the scoot usually ran great, but it shut off while he was riding one day and then he couldn't get it going again. That led him to replace the original carb with a cheap Amazon carb labeled as Wabron or Wabro, which I assume is a cheap knockoff of the name Walbro. He said that he later realized that the oil reservoir was empty and said that the scooter wouldn't run without oil in the reservoir. So he probably tossed the Yamaha carb out for no reason at all, because after putting oil in it, he could get it to run well with the new carb, but after a while it just didn't want to start again. It sounded like he was telling me that the reservoir disabled something, most likely ignition in this case, rather than thinking that the engine was damaged from lack of oil or just wouldn't start without oil. I'm much more accustomed to Chinese scooters, and the ones that I've had don't disable anything when they're out of oil. A dummy light will usually come on when the oil is low, and beyond that, if the engine dies, then it's seized from lack of lubrication. A wiring diagram showed that one of the wires from the oil level gauge and light does run to the ignition switch, but it looks like that's just providing power to the circuit with the key on, rather than acting as a safety kill switch. I still checked for spark just in case I was wrong, but the ignition was working. I used the borescope to look into the cylinder, and I could see some scuffing, but it didn't look like anything major that would keep the engine from running, and a compression test showed a healthy 172 psi. At that point, I figured it was probably just a carburetor or a fuel issue, so I went ahead and removed the rest of the oil injection system. The fuel in the tank didn't smell old, but I wanted to see what was in the bowl, so I removed the carb for a thorough cleaning. What came out of the bowl was dark and had a pungent varnish-like smell. Most likely the last owner put a little bit of fresh fuel in to try to fire it, but never thought, or maybe never knew, to drain the old stuff out of the carb, so it wouldn't fire. At least if I'm lucky. After disassembly, I gave the carb multiple cycles in an ultrasonic cleaner with dish soap and water. While waiting, I removed the air filter and cleaned and oiled it, even though it didn't look dirty enough to cause a problem. The carb came out looking basically new, but I cleaned it all again with carburetor cleaner and compressed air, being very sure to get every passage. I found that when I put the cap on the carb, the slide wouldn't align with the cap, which prevented it from opening all the way to get full throttle. I had to enlarge the screw hole in the cap to fix that. There was a tab that only let the cap rotate so far, but it left a lot of wiggle room and there was nothing to keep the slide from moving in other ways, so I'd still have to be careful every single time that I have to install the carb. I replaced the original fuel hoses and vacuum petcock with 1/4-inch Tygon hose and a manual shutoff valve. While I appreciate the convenience of vacuum petcocks, unless your gas tank is below the carburetor and requires a pump, to me they're just one more potential point of failure. After adding some fresh 32-to-1 premix, the engine came to life on the second kick and just needed the speed screw turned up so it would idle. The Jog wasn't insured or registered yet, so I just took it around the yard and I was surprised at how peppy it felt. If I caught it in the right spot, it would even hop the front tire up, just barely off the ground. Even scoots like Yamaha Zumas or the Eton Beamers with very deep stock gearing hadn't felt this good to me. It's not that I thought it was truly quick or fast, but being so small and light, it was impressive for being stock and made it fun to ride. I also didn't expect it to be as comfortable as it was for me. I'm about 6'2" and 300 pounds, so it's easy for scooters to feel cramped or for me to not be able to put my feet anywhere that doesn't have my knees either hitting the handlebars or bent too much. But that wasn't a problem. While I waited for my insurance company to get back to me with a policy number so I could make it road legal with the MBA, I installed a new replacement seat cover that I found on eBay for less than $40 shipped. I didn't want to spend much money on this thing, but I figured I could justify the cover because to me it was one of the most glaring flaws at a glance and would probably increase the resale value that much. The seat had a lot of play in it when closed, and it knocked every time I hit a bump. Adding washers and shims on the mounting post removed the slop, but it would still move side to side. I cut pieces of roughly 1/8 inch thick rubber and inserted one in each side of the opening for the latch to eliminate most of the movement. A few days passed and I got the insurance and registration taken care of, so I could finally see what the Jog was like on road. My first observation was how much the scooter responds to any sort of steering input or rider movement. Shifting my weight only slightly would make it swerve, and the idea of counter-steering with any force for abrupt turning had me imagining a response similar to a fighter jet doing a barrel roll. I was suddenly a daredevil, throwing caution to the wind while being fully aware that a rock the size of a pea might send me flipping end over end. The Jog isn't a scooter, it's an adventure. Unfortunately, I can't say that the acceleration triggered the same kind of fear, but it did feel good for being totally stock. Even the best pass of 1683 at 36.67 miles per hour is not speedy, but its average time was roughly a second quicker than a genuine Buddy 50 with some CVT tuning that I had rode, and only a little more than a tenth off of a liquid-cooled Malaguti 50 with a performance pipe. A 100-pound or so lighter rider on any of those scooters should go about a second quicker based on past observations. But these are fair comparisons because I'm using my own data from my own tests. Max speed was 41 miles per hour, with me tucked as much as I'm going to tuck, and a little bit of a tailwind. I was already hooked, and reselling the Jog for a profit anytime soon was no longer an option. I couldn't wait to get my hands dirty and find out what this scooter could do with a little bit of work instead of the more typical route of a 70cc kit and a tuned pipe. I'll probably always say that a big bore kit is the best way to speed up a 49cc, but it sounds like fun to see what happens when parts are modified instead of going straight to a shopping cart full of aftermarket parts. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and if you do need to fill a cart with quality parts, I would suggest checking out scootertuning.ca that supports this channel. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this video up now, but if you want to see how the Jog progresses with some DIY mods, then make sure you don't miss any future episodes by checking to see if you're subscribed and that notifications are turned on. And please give this video a like if you've enjoyed it or found it helpful. As always, thank you for watching. Wait, ho, hang on, don't, stop the fade out. Okay, so just real quick, I've had a lot of people asking me, where are new videos? When are you going to get new videos up? Well, obviously, if you're watching this, hey, there's a new video for you. But just so you know, I've basically been busy in the garage an awful lot lately. I spent a long time working on the Jog, so there's plenty of updates about that. I know people want to see what's happening with T2. That's my 100cc stage 6 scooter. I will be doing updates about that. I've also had some customer scooters around, so I've just been busy in the garage, and I will be putting updates up whenever I actually have the time to get video stuff together. It takes me a very long time to do most of these videos, so just bear with me. But anyway, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.